Looking back on my life, there are a lot of small moments and encounters that, going forward, shaped everything else in ways that might not have registered for me at the time. A surprising number of those moments involve picking up a book or being handed a DVD by a friend. This is a new web series about those moments and about media that changed the course of my life. Media that, if you haven't already checked it out, might change your life too. My name is Shannon, and when I was a kid, I wanted to be a storyboard artist or a comics artist, or maybe a writer. I didn't really know. I was very shy and had a lot of time to myself, and I drew a ton and played a lot of video games and eventually got really into anime and manga. Over time, I saw some movies I liked. My mom showed me horror movies and some classic comedies, and I watched probably about as many films in general as other kids. Most of my time was spent reading and drawing, though, and I didn't really see the appeal of film outside of entertainment, or at least I had never been taught to approach it or considered approaching it the way I was taught in school to approach literature, as something complex and worthy of deeper engagement. Literature was something built with subtlety and intelligence that you deconstructed to really appreciate, whereas movies were funny or scary distractions. When I was around 15 or 16, my friend lent me Shaun of the Dead. She knew I liked horror movies, and she thought it was funny and thought that I would get a kick out of it. Shaun of the Dead was written by Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg and directed by Edgar Wright.
I like film.
It stars Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. These three guys have worked together previously.
And then when it came for Space to happen, which is our sitcom, I suggested that we use this guy I knew called Nick Frost.
Hello.
A very accomplished young actor.
He wasn't an actor at the time, he was a waiter.
But this was their first feature film together, and probably the first time I had ever heard of any of them. It's kind of a self-aware mashup, romantic comedy and zombie film that also legitimately functions in the two genres, rather than just being a parody.
We always kind of shy away from the word spoof because we feel that kind of always implies that you're making fun in some way, whereas this very much comes from the point of view of people who enjoy those films and want to kind of celebrate them.
When I watched Shaun of the Dead, I was both genuinely frightened by the horror elements of the film and kind of delighted by the comedy. I ended up watching Space, the sitcom that preceded it.
Hi, Dom. Yeah. This is Dwayne Benzie. Dwayne Benzie. How you doing?
This is where the Pegg Wright Frost team stuff really got its hooks in me. I became obsessed with their works. But most of all, I got very, very excited about their upcoming movie called HOT FUZZ. If Shaun of the Dead was a loving deconstruction of zombie movies that also existed as a zombie movie, HOT FUZZ was going to be the same but for action films.
Maybe a little more parody than Shaun of the Dead was. Shaun of the Dead, I don't think it was funny to see zombies in London. The comedy came from the fact that it was in suburbia, perhaps, whereas it is funny to see a big shootout in a village.
I wasn't especially familiar with action as a film genre at this point, but I was excited nonetheless. At the time, I liked a movie review group called The Spill, and I rewatched their HOT FUZZ review over and over and showed it to my friends.
These guys are taking films that we've seen a dozen times and reinventing it and making something really funny that exists on its own. Shaun of the Dead and HOT FUZZ are going to be regarded as the funniest movies that came out of this time.
Yeah, it's not that they're making parodies in as much as they are really making real movies. With Shaun of the Dead, they made a real zombie movie and put a comedy in it. With this, they're making a real cop buddy action film and just adding comedy to it.
But make fun of it while telling a real story that you can watch at the same time.
It really sounded like a movie that I would love. It was something I experienced a lot more when I was younger and don't really have as much now, if at all. Obsessive excitement and anticipation for a piece of media. It's like when a bunch of my online friends started playing TF2 and I would watch and rewatch the Meet the Team videos in the interim between then and when I would get the game. The anticipatory joy of, wow, this looks amazing, or just the idea of something, rather than the final product itself, was enough to get me really excited. When I finally saw HOT FUZZ, it did not disappoint. I hadn't seen Die Hard, I hadn't seen Lethal Weapon.
What about Lethal Weapon?
No.
You seen Die Hard, dude?
No.
Bad Boys 2?
No.
I hadn't seen the vast majority of what was referenced and paid homage to in the film.
You ain't seen Bad Boys 2?
So a great deal of the cleverness and appeal was actually lost on me initially. But what I understood, maybe even from the first viewing, was that here were people working in a medium I wasn't very familiar with who were doing it with such intense passion and craft that they managed to produce a film that was engaging not only viscerally as a surface-level action comedy film, but on top of that, one that had an emotional core and engaging characters, thematically served as a critique of British culture, and was densely packed with so many references and so many brilliant but subtle jokes that it demanded repeat viewings. HOT FUZZ is 3 films. It starts as a fish-out-of-water comedy about a hyper-competent police officer forced into a job well below his skill level, becomes a thriller about gruesome murders in a small town, and ends as a no-holds-barred action film. I found a post I made when I was 17 in 2008 where I talk about the film's beautiful circularity. These 3 film-within-a-films echo each other and have threads that connect and bind them despite the huge differences in tone, form, and content between them. A throwaway line from early in HOT FUZZ:
"This is Leslie Tiller, whose horticultural expertise has helped put Sanford on the map."
She's ever so good. Oh, go on.
Might take on a more sinister or tragic meaning later.
Her horticultural expertise helped put Sanford on the map.
Oh, she was ever so good.
Hot Fuzz also lovingly embraces the homoeroticism of action films, rather than avoiding or being repulsed by it. An early draft love interest for Nick Angel was scrapped in favor of focusing on his relationship with Danny, and Peg's rejection of the bromance label has always been refreshing to me.
You can be affectionate with each other, you can love each other,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to be some, and even if it does turn into something,
Right.
which it didn't, but if it does, it's okay. We always sort of flinch at this sort of bromance buzzword that's come up, as if there's no equivalent for women, because it's not weird if women are friends.
Right.
Suddenly it's such a modern phenomenon that guys can be honestly friends with each other and not have to pat each other on the back. They can actually,
like, hey, bro, come here, man.
yeah,
a little of that.
because of because of homosexual terror that straight guys have.
And macho garbage.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Now there has to be this word for it, and
Yeah.
it's crazy.
It is. It's sad, is what it is.
It is totally sad.
This isn't meant to be a full analysis of Hot Fuzz. I'll probably do a Cornetto retrospective sometime and try to do justice to what about these movies work so well. Like, The World's End is also wonderful and somehow didn't disappoint either after 7 years of obsessive anticipation on my part, but it belongs in another essay. This is just about a moment in my life that represented a huge shift for me. After Hot Fuzz, I wanted to know more about movies it referenced, and then movies in general. I wrote about film for my high school newspaper, and looked for film clubs in college. I cut AMVs when I was an anime nerd, and came to the realization that I could actually pursue editing as a career, and started putting film clips to music and cutting home videos in my spare time, which really is how I learned to edit. Again, I was shy, but film was something I became passionate and knowledgeable about, to the extent that I could discuss it with other film nerds and find common ground. For the first time, I started to have respect and recognition in communities that weren't just on the internet, and got to be a film club officer or a short film contest judge and stuff like that. Not that there's anything wrong with being part of online communities or that online relationships aren't just as valuable as face-to-face ones, just that sometimes only feeling like I belonged when I sat down at the computer was kind of alienating. As I became more outgoing, I had a lot more confidence. And it became easier to make friends in general, not just with film nerds. I also finally had a career path. Like, I want to work in movies. Or, at least, I want to work in something movie adjacent, which is what I'm doing with my Film Nerd series. It's kind of dangerous to make media consumption that much of my identity, and I try to balance it with other aspects of my life, but the high that I got while devouring that movie and figuring out every joke and every reference and going as far as I could to really appreciate it helped ignite something in me and made me crave media that had as much love put into it as Wright and Peg put into their films.
We've always really wanted to appeal to people in such a way that, they absolutely love it rather than just think, that's pretty good. I'd much rather one person go, that is the best thing I've ever seen in my life, than a million people say, it's pretty good. Say, meh.
As a writer and editor, I always try not to insult audience intelligence, and to make content that is dense, that rewards close attention and repeat viewings, because I realized how much I loved that as a spectator.
Whenever I watch your movies, I notice just the editing, the writing, even something as simple as like characters walking to music, which I know can't be easy. And there's so much effort you put into it. As a director, whenever you watch a film that is inherently perhaps a lazy film, does it make you angry as a director?
It only makes me angry if I think the director can do better. Then that would make me angry, thinking, you can do better than that.
Wright's obsessive passion really raised the bar for me, both as a consumer and as a creator. Hot Fuzz changed my life by teaching me to appreciate film and to appreciate people who are passionate about their art. I'm glad I came into film the way that I did. There are a lot of brilliant and subtle 60s European art films I would have fallen in love with just as much, and that I did fall in love with down the line, but I'm really happy I kind of came into film sideways. I've met people with disdain for genre pictures who wouldn't take slapstick gore seriously if their life depended on it. People who aren't interested in something like this film past a cursory, dismissive glance, and they'll never be able to appreciate Hot Fuzz. Not that everyone has to consume and enjoy the same media or consume it in the same way, but man, was it an experience I'm glad I didn't miss out on. I definitely wouldn't be here on YouTube talking to you about movies without it. If you enjoy this and want to actually learn about film culture and history rather than listen to me talk about myself, check out my So You Want to Be a Film Nerd web series. I also have an essay on video games as a medium that I'm really proud of, if that sounds more like something you'd prefer. I've guested on a bunch of podcasts to talk about film too, so you can check out those and hear me unscripted. And finally, if you have some spare money, please consider donating to my Patreon so I can keep making videos like this one. Thanks.